Okay, this will be the last video in how I make these carriage wheels. In part 3 of the video, I had all the spokes, the hub, and the felloes cut, and I needed a way to glue the felloes together. So I came up with this jig here, and I ran it through my table saw to cut these slots in to receive a spline. Just for a better joint, for more surface area on the glue. So I did that, and actually, before I get to this jig here that I made, I have the first wheel all glued up and sanded out, and it came out real nice. So I glued it up using this jig. I glued this one up last night, and I made this jig here. And I just have a 1-inch dowel rod to hold the hub, and then I have spacers, and I have those spacers set just at the right height, so the bottom edge of this spoke will be 90 degrees from the hub. And this is the outside of the wheel. The inside has that taper on it. Now, I just started making these, and I just started researching these wheels, but I did find out that there's such a thing as a dished wheel, which means that this hub is pushed in, or the wheel section is pushed out. Another way to put that is the outboard spokes are not 90 to the hub. But I made this wheel. In carriage making, sometimes they do put that dish in it and sometimes they don't. So I opted to just keep it straight, but I still do have the taper on the inboard side, the tapered spokes. So what I did to make this jig, it's a 1/2-inch plywood. I didn't have any 3/4-inch plywood, and I put some stiffeners on the back because there was a slight bow in the plywood, just to make it straight. So I have this 1-inch dowel rod and all these spacers here, and I set it on here, and I set the thickness of the height of these spacers so that the back side of this hub will be 90, or the back side of the spoke will be 90 to the hub. So what I do is right now it's just dry fit. I do have a ratchet strap on here, but everything lines up real nice. So I'll take and remove this, and I'm using West System epoxy. That's what I used on all the joints here. I put it in the hub and on the 1/4-inch dowel rod going through the felloes on the spokes, and I also have it on that spline and on the butt joint there where the fellows come together. And it came out real nice. I mean, it's that West System epoxy. It's strong glue. So I use it in the boat work all the time. So I have my jig here, and I set this on here. I'll glue everything up, and then once I get this ratchet strap on here and all these joints, I'm happy with them. I'll go ahead and I made my splines, and I'll put my splines right through there. It's like a biscuit, and they're a snug fit. And I made these splines, as I was saying in the last video, I have to make sure and run the grain this way across the joint. If you were to run it the other way, this wood would just split and it wouldn't be effective. So I ran the grain the right way, and I made these a little bit wider than they needed to be. If I put this spline up to that first one I glued up, you can see that's a little bit wider, and it's just easier. You just sand that down after it's glued up. So I'm getting ready to glue this one. And one other feature of this jig I wanted to show you is, since I have the reason that I have all these plywood spacers on here is to make sure that all the fellows are in the same plane. And then what I do is I have these wood blocks here with a hole in them, and I just put them on there. And then I put a washer and a 1/4 nut on it, and I just put a little pressure on them, all of them, just to hold them down for the glue. So then I'll glue this up and leave it overnight, and then in the morning I'll go ahead and mill this down, and I'll show you how I did that. After I came in this morning and it was all glued up, I took this all apart and I made this jig here. I wanted this, the shoulder or the side of the wheel to be, to be nice. That's the whole reason that I had these spacers on here, to get it in the same plane. But I needed a way to clean it up, and instead of going ahead with a sanding block and just sanding it, I made this jig here, which actually is a 2-in-1 jig. The first thing it does is it cleans up these shoulders for me. So I did the same thing. I have a piece of 1/2-inch plywood with the 1-inch dowel rod, and then I have these riser blocks, all the same height, with 80 grit sandpaper on it. And what I do is I set this on here, and I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but that hub is not sitting on this plywood, and you can flip it over to the other side, and that's the same, because I don't want it to ride on the plywood, I want it to ride on these riser blocks. So the first thing I did was, these splines were a little bit proud, so I took my offset chisel and just, I just cut into that, and just chiseled those closer to the surface. And once I got them real close, I set it on here, and it hits all of these equally. I just sat it on here, and I just worked it in like this. And it seems to me it's a good way to work that surface down. So I did that, and I got those sides real nice. They're pretty good. Now this is not a high-speed wheel, but I still want it to be as nice as I can get it. And then, once I did that, this outer surface had glue oozing out of the joints, and it wasn't exactly equal distance from the hub to the outside all the way around. It wasn't exactly concentric. It was a little bit off, and if you look at, here's this older Amish built one, and you can see the wheel there. It wobbles this way, and there's a little bit of up and down movement to it. So it's not the end of the world, because this is, like I said, it's not a high-speed wheel, and it'll work just fine. But I thought it'd be easy to just make this jig and make this as close to concentric as I could. So I put this on here, and I worked down both shoulders, and then what I did was, I made this jig originally for my sander here, and I put this plywood in it, and I had a couple of machine screws go through here for adjusters, and I had it so I would be able to just ease this thing in, because those number 10 machine screw would ride along this edge here, and it would get me, I could inch my way in real in small increments to be able to go ahead and turn this and grind that outside concentric with the hub. But I noticed when I was doing that this table has movement to it, so that's no good, and I didn't really feel like going through and trying to remedy that right now. So instead, I just put it up here on my spindle sander, and I just took 2 big clamps and clamped this to the table. I got this real close. I put pretty good pressure on the clamps, and then I just spun this as the sander was going. And then when I needed to go in a little bit more, I just took a hammer and just barely bumped the jig. And then it went in a little bit more. And I only ended up taking, maybe a 1/16 off that outer edge. Not even that, I don't think. It wasn't much, but I figured I'd rather do that than have a wheel that was wobbling like that. Or that was out of round. So this wheel is done. That's all I'll do. The next step for this is I'll stain it and start putting a finish on it. So I'm real happy with how it came out. Everything's square on it as far as the edges here, and it's as true as I'm going to get it. And it stands up on its own. So that'll do it. That was my first wheel. And I think I like these splines, and I like the glue joints. I've got glue on all the joints, so it's going to be a real strong wheel. So I'll take this apart. This will be my next move. Take it apart and glue it all up, and then put it together. And then tomorrow it didn't take that long it took maybe 10 or 15 minutes to finish the sides and the outboard edge of this wheel. So that'll do it. That'll do it on how I build wooden carriage wheels, okay? Okay, one thing I forgot to mention was how I routed that detail into the hub. As you remember, I was waiting on that router bit, and I finally got it. And I put it in my router table. Now I did this before it was glued up, when I just had the hub, and the hub was just a cylinder. And this router bit doesn't have a bearing on it, so I had to set my fence up similar to how it's set up right now. So when I brought that, here, let me grab something, this roll of sandpaper here. So if this was a hub, since this doesn't have a router bit on it, I needed a stop, so I used this piece of mahogany here. So I brought it up real close, and I just spun it, and I tried to bring it right over that bit, and I just kept spinning it 2 or 3 times around there until I got that profile. And it took me, I didn't cut that all in one depth. It took a couple of passes to get this. And then this step right here I used this straight bit right here, and I did the same thing. I took it right over it and spun it until I got about 1/8 of an inch thick on that. And what that is, that receives a metal ring. There's actually 4 rings that go on this hub, and they're real similar to this wheel here. This metal ring here, that's what that step in that hub is, on the inboard and outboard side. And then there's another metal ring that goes right along the spokes. So I did that, and then I glued everything up. But I just forgot to mention that in the main video about that router bit. Okay?